Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. Namanda. Good morning. I'd like to wish everyone a Happy New Year. This being the first Sunday of the month, we are having our usual Shotsuki service, where we honor those who passed away in the month of January. If you have a home altar or obutsudan, please burn incense in their memory and honor. If you have a loved one who passed away this month and we do not read their name, you can also burn incense in their memory or just keep them in your thought. I will now read the names that we have. Jeffrey Akira Oto, Teruko Iwata, Priscilla Ishikazaki, Maria del Refugio Gonzalez, Masami Iwataki, Toru Shiraishi, Michiko Kazi, Mitsuyo Ota, Leonard Ellison, Gary Yukio Kodama, Dorothy Matsumoto, Mitsuru Amano, Dorothy Elroy, Osao Himaka, Yoshinobu Sueyoshi, Isen Iguchi, Pro Takanori Nimura, Kimie Fukamizu, Harry Yamada, Sumiko Tsubakihara, Yoshiko Kusumoto, Mitsuko Kodama, Sumiko Kendo, Takenori Ohara, Seiji Saito, Robbie John Nishiguchi, Kazumi Yamada, Miwako Kosaka, Yukiko Watsuke, George Furuya, Haruko Iguchi, Kyoko Santo Higashi, Kesao Muraoka, Frank Akira Kajita, Tetsuyo Kashima, Chieno Okuma Oribe, Frank Torio, Masako Nadahara, Setsuko Uchida, Elaine Matsumoto Barrett, Nobudo Nakada, Shigeru Tabata, Shizuko Shimizu, Oshie Shimizu, Ikuyo Takeshita, Nobuo Honda, John Konishi, Claude Holt, Harry Matsumoto, Ryu Yonekura, Kyo Muraoka, Seki Kawasaki, Sei Tsurumoto, Kuni Kawamoto, Mitsuyo Urata, Mitsutaro Shimizu, Moto Kobayashi, Hachiro Honda, Isao Ogawa, Shinichi Kawamoto, Kiyotaka Kusumoto, Sojiro Torimaru, Toshiko Funaki, Hashio Yunekura, Masakichi Saito, Satoru Hata, Shigeko Takeguchi, Harue Okumura, Nobuo Hagio, Sokichi Kodama, Usaburo Ito, Teichiro Miyoshi, Mitsuyoshi Shindo, Hisaichi Taniguchi, Chiono Tomiyama, Matsuno Fujimoto, Bill Koga, Chosaburo Yamashita, Jiro Niizawa, Tsunekichi Higuchi, Tsutamatsu Iwata, Mitsuko Kuwada, Kotake Kondo. Please join me in voicing the Nembutsu as related to those who have passed on. Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. Namanda. The last few talks I've been giving have emphasized our present situation. We all know that 2020 was a difficult year for all of us. We experienced the first noble truth of suffering. Things were off-centered. I made an analogy a few weeks ago as if we were traveling in mud. And then I made the comment that we hear often, out of the mud grows the lotus. And that symbolizes the fact that we don't get rid of the mud. We have to learn to live with it. It's necessary for the lotus to grow. And our Gasho posture emphasizes this because it tells us that both sides are symbolized by our hands. And we talked about either or becoming both and. And this is something that's important because I want to emphasize that we don't get rid of this negative side. It is necessary to maintain it. And that's what we would like to talk about today. It sometimes seems counterintuitive to keep the negative, and yet this is life. Buddhist truth does not look to eliminate that negative side, but instead to balance it. This being the new year, we think about resolutions. We have this thought about improving ourselves to better our future. And that's correct. Ringing the bell on New Year's Eve is symbolic of letting go of all those passions. But what's carried on from 2020 to 2021? The thing that we carry forward is what? Ourself. Let's look at ourselves to see how 2021 may change. In order for that to happen, the self must change. Buddhism is very empowering in that it tells us that our future depends on us. We don't depend on an external deity or something else that determines our future. The causes and conditions of all things are occurring all the time. Some are beneficial, some are detrimental to us personally. But it's how we respond to our condition that determines whether things may be good or bad. And so our practice is how we discern what is true and how we respond accordingly. It means that we may have to let go of some old and unhelpful beliefs, our attachments. The Buddha understood this and explained it with the Four Noble Truths. I'd like to use some terms in modern psychology to explain the details so that we can demonstrate the Buddhist path in ways that we might better understand it. These beliefs we have began in infancy and childhood, when we learned to cope with this huge, confusing, threatening world. We learned that our thoughts and behavior were sometimes not appropriate according to our family or community. So we hid these things in the back of our minds, and they became invisible to us. We call it our shadow, the portion that's not visible to us. But it becomes evident to others when we are stressed or act out. This is what Shinran refers to as our evil self. And it's true that we can't get rid of it, but we can learn to recognize our shadow and to work with it. A modern thinker and writer, Ken Wilber, has coined the process, and he calls it the pre-trans fallacy. This pre-ego and trans-ego is a fancy way of just saying that we do not go back to our childhood ways, but we transcend it, we go beyond it. And it may sound a little mysterious and hard to understand, but we do this at each level. As we mature, we let go of old beliefs and we accept new ones. Think back to the time when we were little children. Many of us thought we would be, space cadets or princesses. And then as we matured, perhaps getting into our teenage or pre-teenage years, we thought we would become professional athletes or great dancers or something like that. And then as we got into high school and matured a little more, we began to realize that those dreams may not be true. And then we had to protect our ego. And so we began to hide more of these inadequacies, and we hide them in our shadow. All of this was to protect our ego. And it's our attachment to protect our ego that has created this dissatisfaction with what happens in life. Rather than accept our ego, we blame the outer world for not being as we imagined. It's like we were when we were teenagers. The world didn't fit our expectations. And some of us are stuck at this age, and this is why I call it the teenage mentality. And we do see this acted out overtly in some of our public figures as they act out teenage behaviors by being loud, erratic, and low on logic. Fortunately, most of us grow out of this stage. We can all do that with practice. We cling to the teenage ego because we feel insecure. And this is a survival mode. We think that our image of our ego satisfies our parents. We cling to this stage and will not go forward until we feel secure. In Shin Buddhism, Shinran tells us that we are held in the protection of Amida Buddha. Amida is sometimes depicted in human form with the thoughts of being accepted just as we are, no qualifications. Amida Buddha is sometimes referred to in Japanese as Oya-sama, or great parent. And so we have thoughts that our ultimate parent accepts us just as we are, especially with our evil self, our shadow. And with this security, we can let go of many thoughts and behaviors that are obsolete or outdated. We no longer have to behave like teenagers trying to protect our little ego. We can move on to become our authentic self. And it's not really important to understand all these things I said. I merely wanted to validate the Buddhist teachings that are relevant and valid in this modern world, as transpersonal psychology has proved that it is true that these things happen. But it goes beyond psychology. It also involves the spiritual realm. The methods of modern psychology work as thousands of people have progressed beyond their limitations. The practices I've suggested give more detail to Shinran's truth of voicing the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, our primary practice. It's not a prayer to have the external world shift to our wants, but it is a reminder, an affirmation, an aspiration that each of us can shift our mind and heart to the true reality that exists. Our suffering occurs because we are ignorant of the true reality that surrounds us. It may not be an easy path to transcend our ego that we have nurtured for so many years, yet we have our whole lifetime to transcend it. Once we have made this crosswise leap, we will never go back to the old world of illusion. This gassho of both and reminds us of accepting the negative as we balance it with the positive, a shift from please to thank you, balancing the negative, not eliminating it. Now, accepting the negative is very hard to do, and we can think of it as seeing the glass that is half full or half empty. So this is a practice to seeing the benefits of the situation. And it does take a practice to see something good out of a bad situation. If we have a loss, it's very difficult to see something redeeming. And so it does take a constant practice of seeing the thank yous in the midst of please. So I encourage you all to look at these things that we have suggested, seeing little things that we can do every day to say thank you. And we continue our journey of balance. Now, as our practical lives improves, our outlook in life improves. And eventually we can expand this to include the spiritual realm, one small step at a time. Eventually, it may become a giant leap. It'll be a giant leap where we have the shift from please to thank you. And we will begin to appreciate all of life's offerings. So please join me in expressing our deepest appreciation for this life and the teachings of the Buddha. Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandas, namandas.